Well, who was it that sang a song, "Oops, I Did It Again"? Well, I got a subject. I ran through this 4 times before I realized I don't know that I can cut the video down too short without, other than breaking it up into multiple pieces. So that's what we're going to do in this. This very first one we're going to start with. What I'm going for in the end, and we're going to talk about the 2 finalists for the beast upstairs for this new video editing machine. We're getting that done. I got down to 2 boards, but we're going to start with ASRock's website. We're going to go through that a little bit because they've got some little bugginess, some peculiarities with it. They've been around a long time, but the website's kind of a mess in my opinion. And we'll go into some of the backgrounds on the boards, how do you know if you're going to be looking basically at a high-end board, a medium, or kind of the budget board? We'll do it. I'll try to do it as quick as I possibly can and try to make some sense out of it. It may be review. Some of this may be review for some people, but at the same time, I need to get the basics in before we go into the real, fine as frog's hair differences between 2 very similar boards, but different, that we have on tap here. So appreciate you watching. Oh, and we got one announcement if you'll stick around for that. Well, hello. Today we're going to talk about the 2 finalists for the new birthing person board for the Beast, the Water Buffalo, the Custom Loop, whatever you want to call it. I'm building a new video rig for editing, and there's a lot of backstory which will just take way too long to go into, but I used to build PCs back in the day when I was a young guy and they were first invented, and then life happened and I kind of quit. And the last couple machines I just bought right out. Obviously, you're going to buy a laptop straight out, but desktop, same way. Recently, I got a little bit of a frustration came with Microsoft. I've done some talks about the mandatory hardware updates, which include TPM 2.0 and stuff that really I don't think helps me a whole lot. I think it just helps Microsoft and the corporate world get to my data and my usage and my characteristics. I'm not really sure I want it, not really sure I need it, but it was time to upgrade. Faster memory, faster motherboard, faster I/O, that kind of thing. So we've done that. Now we're down to building this machine, stuck halfway in between because I was waiting on the new Arrow Lake to come. Got that, and in between there I built a new Z90 out of the old box, which was just in time for the laptop that I run the roaster, the coffee roaster, to die. And unfortunately it died, and I just happened to have everything except for a box, a case to put it in spare parts, and I did in fact build it for the roaster, which gives me a nice cool segue to my little enterprise we got going on, my genuine gold quality small batch. I know it because it says it right there on the bag. There it is. It's a new enterprise. We're selling coffee in the state of Tennessee, and it'll be mostly national. There'll be the West Coast logistical problems. I won't be doing those to those states, but other than that, the continental contiguous United States, there we should be able to get some coffee, roasted, small batch, single origin, or in this case, this one happens to be a double barrel. It's 2, but they're mixed because one is sort of a light, kind of a nuttier flavor, high altitude. The other one is more of a traditional low density bean that will roast up kind of like traditional coffee, but not quite grocery store. Anyway, they're available, running a special February of 2025, and it is for this month you get $5 off hoodies, whether they be pull over or full zip. It's easier to do it as a $5 off. That's close to kind of 10%ish on it, but it's not. I do make them one at a time through a local vendor, so they take a week or so, typically, maybe up to 2 weeks, depending on if it's the start of school. New enterprise, new going. A lot of these channels say, hey, see me on Patreon where I charge you for a subscription, or you can buy me a coffee, which is code word for donate $5 one time to the show. We're not doing that. If you really want some coffee, I'll sell you some coffee roasted. Now, what do we got going on here? We've got a good show, I think. It's going to be a little bit of talky, a little bit of an explanation, so that if you're like, I'm either being talked down to by people or it's just not giving me any information when I talk about these birthing person boards, because you can't say motherboard anymore. That's politically incorrect. I've got it down to 2. Now, what I find difficult is with all the different brands, there's Gigabyte, there's Asus. I think I'm pretty well much done with buying anything Asus. So probably wouldn't look at Asus. I'm going to go back to a company called ASRock. I've had good luck with one board, and it wasn't even a high-end board. It was a budget board in that last gaming system. 7 years worked pretty good. Let's kind of get this going pretty hard. Now, let's talk about their website. If I don't mess my panel switching up over here, we're going to go over to the left panel. Now, I'm going to just Google here, ASRock. and I already have it because this is like not my first take at this. There's the name of the company, ASRock. I think they build pretty good products. They've been around for a while. I'm going to look here where it's at. See, Google needs to get on to somebody. ASRock does not have the word birthing person. It still says motherboard, and that's politically incorrect these days. So we're going to click on that. It's going to bring up their main page. And here's the thing. It works. They have a lot of information there. I find it a little bit difficult if you're not going here on a regular basis. It's good. Like, I want to compare. I want to know why some boards cost way more money than some are like $150, $200. Others are $300, $400, $500 and on up. I want to know, what am I getting for my money? What am I missing? What am I not getting? If I buy something, I try to save some money. You know, you're going to later find out, crap, for $50 more or $100 more, you could have had that thing that you wanted, but you didn't know you needed it because, you know, it's just not. There are a lot of words that just kind of make your hair hurt, if that makes sense to you. So I want to know, show me what one's got, one's not, and I'll see if I can figure it out. I'm not the brightest penny in the well, but I still spend, you know what I'm saying? All right, so if we go over here and we look at that, at this page, we see not really a lot of place to compare. Now, there is a way, if we hit more, it will bring up add to compare, and we can go from there. But before we do a comparison there, let's back up and see how many options did we possibly have through the years, because I want to talk to you a little bit about the chipsets and the sockets, what that means, and then the series. ASRock has an H series, a B series, and a Z series, or Z if you're over in the old country, Z series. They have the different chipsets, and chipsets go with certain sockets, and certain sockets mean. We'll get to that in just a second. But let's go back over and look at that one more time. So here we are. Let me make it go full screen. I don't know what an X299 is because we haven't filtered anything, so I'm just going to go back one, and we'll reload the page because that's what Google does for some reason with my Chrome. So we're going to go down here, and let's talk about what they mean by category. All right, the category, for lack of a better word, is their product line. I've driven a lot of Toyotas here lately, and so you know that Toyota is like the ASRock, the brand. Well, they also make the Tundra, the RAV4. They have different models of car, different product lines. They have different trim packages, different grades, and they have different values. So if you were a long-time buyer of ASRock, you would recognize the Aqua series, which is new, I think. Phantom Gaming, Workstation Creator, Taichi, Steel Legend. So these transcend processors and chipsets over a period of time. They're a continuation. If you like the last one, then you probably like this one, kind of thing, but under there. So I'm just going to close that down and look at the socket. Now, what the socket is the actual hardware configuration of a kind of an era or a series of processors. Like, we just got finished with the core processors, and the core processors were 3, 5, 7, and 9 i9s. They were core processors. They were on a socket that was the LGA 1700. That was what it was. They handled certain architectures internally and threads. They did hyper threading. The new ones I don't think do. They kind of worked their own little world, and they used a specific socket that has a certain number of pins, and it's described by 1700. So that would be that socket. 1851 is the new Arrow Lake series. They're just out this year, first year for them. And some of the gaming people out there and internet people are really trashing Intel. I suspect it's more of an AMD biased against Intel than anything else, because it has some real benefits, which I won't get into unless we talk about the chipset specific. In this case, we're not going to do this. I want to talk about how to make sense from the website when you're kind of looking at it. So some of the words begin to make sense to you a little bit. So that was the old socket. Before that was the 1200. I think I've had them down to 1151. I've had something I swear was on the 1200 socket in the last several computers. The one I just built was the 1700 LG8. That's the one we're looking at right now. It's on the 12th generation with a Z790 chipset, which means I can overclock it. I can push it a little harder. It's more of a premium board, but not in that whole space of Z boards, of Z790s. It wasn't the top wasn't the bottom. So it was fairly functional from that. We'll see what we get into it. So that's what the socket does. Now, if we want to do the chipset, again, I just kind of described that. The chipset runs everything on the board, if you don't know. The processor sort of the brains, but the chipset is the boss between everybody. It's the middle manager. It takes care of most of your disk drives and your outputs and things like you need to do, your serial ATA, a lot of your M.2, your Wi-Fi connections, that sort of thing. They're controlled by the chipset. We have memory control and the processor itself. So there's some difference in the new processors that I don't want to spoil just yet, because it could be a different video. So anyway, we've got those picked down, and let's go ahead and take a look at some. I want to look at, tell you what I want to do. Let's go up here and use the filter so that we can turn this more into a check. Well, we have form factor. You know what form factor is? That's how big the board is, how big the case it will fit in. And unfortunately, when you go to small form factor or the ITXs, they get itty bitty. And you're not going to have a lot of room for extra expansion because it's just packed in there too tight. MATX and MITX, these are the smaller boards. The MATX, that, as far as I could research, has two different sizes, a four-hole and 8-hole model. Mine that I had before was designated as an ATX, MATX, and it had 8 holes. I've also found other boards that were ATX. They said they were MATX, and they still only use 4 of the holes, so they're a little bit smaller. So these are how big it's going to be. E is extended ATX. ATX has been the standard since the 286 and IBM came out. So we'll pick that form factor if we want. I tell you what, let's leave that off and get the chipset and the socket, because really all I need to do is hit Intel, and that'll give us this discussion on the branches. The H, or the H, as you might want to call it, that is your very basic computer board. It was what was in my last gaming computer. I think I paid $2,000 for it, and 8 years ago now, I felt like it was just ridiculously expensive, but it did a good job. Didn't have a lot of flexibility to it, but when the roaster laptop died, I was able to scrounge all those leftover parts that I was feel guilty about replacing with new current Z790 and put them in a very nice box. Check that video out. It really turned out well, and it's still rocking, running 11. Microsoft says it was unsuitable to run 11, but there's a way you can put 11 on unsupported hardware. I did it. Other people did it. You can do it too. But it is a H board. It was a H110. That's how old it was. Now the B boards, these are kind of your mid-tier. They're not unlocked processors. They're not overclocking. They're just set. They usually buy a little cheaper. To populate them, they'll usually take because you can't do overclocking, you might as well buy the slightly slower version of the processors that are locked, not where you can open them and do the unclocking. And we have a great number of boards in this space. If we look at all the different versions that we have just by this one manufacturer. So we have quite a bit, but still we're getting to the point. How do you know a good one from a bad one? How do you know what you're buying, what you're not getting, that kind of thing? You know, why am I paying another $100 for something? My 2 boards that I'm going to use for this demonstration are within $50 of each other. My guess for you is, asking you to guess, watching as I go down, start thinking, which one do you think is $50 more and which one is $50 less? That's our challenge today. So we want to go back to our full screen. Here we are. And you see, we got quite a bit more choices in this. We got a bunch of choices. And if we go to the Z90 and take it off, these are the more upper end. They're for processors that are unlocked so that you can overclock them. You can get a little more out if you want. They run fast memory. They're just probably going to be a little bit more on the pricier side. But as we go through there, we do have some choices here as well. Well, let's go back, and did I show you how many we had under the 810, the budget model? I call the H, or the H is the budget, the very basic computer. They're capable, but they're budget kind of. And if you'll notice on this one, we don't have the metal shield that goes around the hole that fits into your case. They're not showing it comes with it. I don't know if it does, don't know if it doesn't. It does come with antenna and a Wi-Fi. Right there is where you put your little I forget the name of that. We can look it on the specs. That is the Intel chip here for the Wi-Fi, and the wires run up there to the antenna post that has the two connectors, but we don't have a little shield here, and we have most likely a fewer number of stages. This is going to be an MATX board, as we can tell, because it is so much smaller. We see that we only have slots for one pair of memory here, two chips, two DIMM slots go right here. That's all you get. You're limited on that. You have one. The point I'm trying to make is, as you get one of the lower end units, you don't get a nice fancy IO shield that's attached to the main board. You get one of those little shiny little plug-in pieces that, you know, I'm not saying how you get it to work into the hole in the case, but you get it in the case, and you don't get the nice silk screen indications like this right here. Now they're not color like this with the yellow and the blue. That's from the highlights, but you see they tell you that this is the 5 gigabit LAN hole, the 10 gigabit instead of the 2.5 and the 5, and you see there what Wi-Fi is. It's definitely Wi-Fi 7, and it indicates the 5 megabits per second USBs to the 10 megabits per second USBs, and of course the Thunderbolt. So you just don't get that fanciness. You just don't get one like that. Hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in. And if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. This is going to be an MATX board, as we can tell, because it is so much smaller. We see that we only have slots for one pair of memory here, two chips, two DIMM slots go right here. That's all you get. You're limited on that. You have one video card slot or expansion slot here. It may be PCIe 4, maybe PCIe 5. Right here we have only one M.2, so you get one drive. Now you may be able to split it, as we did in the backup video where I took you on part 2 and I showed you your drive's not going to read. It's not going to read in your system. You have to initialize it, then partition it, and you can cut a physical drive into two logical drives. We can do it. Or with RAID, you kind of create an array of one logical drive off of multiple physical drives. That's the other direction. But this only has one on it. As you see, it's right there. So that's some limitation. It's a nice small board. And we have the only other version is the non-Wi-Fi. See, it says Wi-Fi. And this one, if we pull it up, and we'll probably have to go back and rekey the website, it'll reset. But the non-Wi-Fi version doesn't come with Wi-Fi. You see, it doesn't have that bracket and the two connectors for the antenna. And what else it doesn't have is it doesn't have the Wi-Fi M.2 in that spot right there, because it goes in this side and you hold it down with a little screw in that little post right there. Run your wires up to here. We also see very minimal kind of heat shields and area cooling for the VRM in this area. It's a budget model, and it's not really what we would call, you know, the real expandable type. It's a functioning board, and it's probably a very, very good functioning board. Let's get the B series. Let's look at some of those. Here we'll see a mixture. Now, one of the things you want to look at are the number of ports and things you have available in the back, right in this area. Let me go ahead and get my face off there, go big again. And these are different boards. Obviously, you can see by the product series, Steel Legend or the Pro or the X. Get an idea. Some of these may actually, the Pro A doesn't have this type of shield in the back either. It's probably going to be a little bit more on the lower end. We see a lot of ATX boards in this chipset. We also see, well, what are all of these little black holes? Because they may mean something to us if we know what we're looking at. But looking at the picture, all we can see is generally the more premium you go, these are where you get a lot of input. Because you're going to find the more premium you go, probably you're going to have some better choices back here. You may have a board that does Thunderbolt 4, but maybe you only have one connection, one port for it. Maybe you have for the onboard graphics or whatever, maybe you have a display port in a HDMI, if you prefer. So whatever, that's where we find it. How do we know what does what? Okay, that's what frustrates me is you know, I don't want a degree in ASRock website viewership to make sense of this. But anyway, let's go ahead and move it up to my two versions that I'm looking at. Because I've already been here, my computer is remembering that this is one that I'm looking at for this discussion. It says it is the Taichi Aqua, and this happens to be water-cooled VRM right up in here. And you look at how much we got stacked off the back. This is a pretty nice one. I think these are all going to be very high-speed ports here. And here are the lower, the square USB versus the 3.0 and above on that one. And we also have, let's see, I think we have 4 on this initial. This one, Taichi Lite. That's also a pretty nice board. It has some Thunderbolts and a lot of others, some 10s and 5s, I guess, in the back, and some 20 gigabits there on the 40 to 40s back there. Let's see, we have this one, the Pro A. Okay, this is, I don't see a shield on that, an I/O shield back here, so that may be a little less expensive. And we're 4. There should be 4 of them on here, but now that we've got them in our compare, floating up and down this website here, do you see anything that says, let me compare these? We've got them loaded. How do we make it compare? A while ago, it was difficult to see how to get it to compare. Now that we've got some selected to look at, how do we get it to show them to us? I don't see any way to do it. The only way I found on the ASRock site to do this is to click this one, this top corner one, and I'm going to say remove it from compare. Now we got 3 boards show up. Now I add it back, and lo and behold, we get our choice to compare our boards. We can close it or we can get it right here. And see, when I do this, it doesn't open a new tab. Well, I've already got that trimmed off. You can't see it. So here's our 4 boards. Now, they're going to tell you this white Aqua happens to be a big board. It's an EATX. We can tell that's a difference. These others are ATX form factors, the same size. This says it's an 8-layer board. This one right here, the 890 Pro, does not indicate it's an 8-layer board. That's the only one, so it may be a little cheaper constructed. If it's not using it, maybe it's a 6-layer board. All right, 2-ounce copper, 2-ounce copper. They're bragging about that. The Aqua, they're bragging about it being a 10-layer PC board. So I'm going to guess that this one is going to be a more expensive one. And I'm going to guess that this one, because it doesn't tell us how many layers, is probably going to be the cheaper one if we were to look at them in their entirety. Now, as we go by, it's not hard in this format, this collimated format, for us to see some of these things have more information. They're taller columns. So, you know, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I can look like, I'm going to go, wait a minute. What does it have? What does it not have? Well, let's roll it up here. This one has Thunderbolt 4, 40 gigabytes. This one has Thunderbolt 4, 40 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes, 40 gigabits, I should say, per second. This one has it there. They all have that. Dual channel, PCIe Gen 5, M.2. They all have that. Server grade, low loss PC board. We don't see that on the nondescript one. We do see server grade on this 8-layer board, and we see here server grade on the 10-layer, but it doesn't indicate it on the Pro A. So we kind of go through here and we look at these stages, 16 plus 1, 1, 1, 1. These don't mean a lot to me, but you'll hear a lot of people on the internet go, oh, this has got 20. So this has got 16, this has got 20, this has got 28, this has got 20. So I'm going to guess that 16 is cheaper than 20, and 20 is cheaper than 28. So I'm going to guess this is the more expensive board, just looking off of that. And it goes through there, do we have BIOS flashback? This is the thing I like. This doesn't have it. Yes, BIOS flashback button. How about that? BIOS flashback button, all of them. But we're missing some stuff. We don't have something in here. The 5 gigabyte LAN, the 5 gigabit LAN, the 5 gigabit LAN, I think it's bit. So let's look at this. We go down to CPU. Everything looks pretty close. This makes it an easy way to compare. And we're going to get down to something here I picked out when it got down to the M.2 and its relationship to the PCIe 5 slot. All right, we see that this note says PCIe slots riser cards. All right, that may be good if you need to turn a video card sideways. You know, to get a vertical. This one also supports it. This one supports it. This one supports it. This has 2 notes. But now this one is one I want to pay attention to. This is something I didn't care for. Let me make sure it's pulled up high enough into the screen that you can see it. Okay? It says, if the M.2 is occupied, PCIe 1 will downgrade to 8-bit, means it was 16, and PCIe 2 will downgrade to 4-bit mode. But what is this talking about, the M.2? Talking about those 2 cards. I don't see this. It says over here, if PCIe 2 is occupied, M2.4 will be disabled. Okay, that means if we plug in a second video card into a slot, we're going to lose the M.2's Gen 4. M.4, this is one of them. This is one particular M.2. So we can see of them. This is one particular M.2. So we can see a little bit of differences start to jump out at us at this stage. This one, the purple one, and the white one here, the black box one, they match up all the way through. And we go through. Let's go ahead and see here. Here's the Pro A, a big bunch of stuff missing off out of this on the audio. So what do you say we go ahead and delete the Aqua? Come on, there we go. And delete the Pro A, because these are the two I'm looking at. To me, I think they are essentially the same board, but there's some very slight differences. One of the two boards is $50 more. Right now, place your bet. Tell me which one of the ones do you think is $50 more expensive than the other one. Are we ready? Okay, I think I'll leave myself down in the box for a little bit. Because as we come through here, where they're both 8-layer boards and 2-ounce copper PC boards and so on, all of this looks exactly the same all the way across, same chipset, same red mark, same memory, 9600, 6868, 96, 6868, right? We're going to keep going. They're all that identical as far as that goes. CPU slots, all of this stuff is the same. Here, this M.2 key E, this is your Wi-Fi slot. That's what that one's for. That's that one indicates, if I'm not mistaken. And well, there it is. Sure enough, it says the Wi-Fi mode, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So you won't have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi if you don't have that little card, that one slot. I'll show it on the board, and we go through there until we get to audio and LAN, or the local area network. We see that this one is the gaming board, okay? And this one is more of the enthusiast business work-related board right here. They're very slight different. They're almost identical. This is more enthusiast. This is more gamer. And see what we have over here in the audio. On the Taichi Lite, we have 5.1 audio. And it says content protection and Realtek. It's got the same codec. It will do that. WIMA. I don't have my glasses on. It's hard for me to read. But the big thing is it's 5.1 channels audio. We look over at the Nova, the gaming one, and see we have 7.1. So, you know, if you're, that may be something that matters to you. If you're a gamer and you have the full immersive surround system around you, the Taichi Lite may not be quite a fit for you. You might like the Nova, the Phantom Gaming Nova, and we wouldn't have known that just kind of looking at them. They look very similar right off the bat. You may go for a price break versus something else without looking at what it's good for. Now the LAN, I don't know that there is that big a difference with the LAN, because this says supports killer LAN software. I'm being honest, I don't know what killer LAN software does. It may actually be everything that this says this is right here, right? Smart audio, auto adjust bandwidth control, visual, user-friendly UI, visual network statistics, use of statistics, optimized default. See, I don't know. This sounds more enterprisey, more work-related than this over here. I don't really know what this is. And if I'm a gamer, does it really matter? I mean, honestly, it depends on what I'm doing. I may be running a NAS and need a network for it. But other than that, I don't know. But there's a difference there. And you see the difference. The Wi-Fi's are identical. The CPUs are identical. And we get all the way through. And it's pretty well much exactly all the way through. Let's see, RAID. I will come back to this on the memory here, on the drives connector. RAID, they have the same RAID line. They're identical. They do the same stuff there. On the storage is exactly the same. Supports Intel volume management support. So you get the idea. There's a little bit different. What else is the difference? Because somewhere there's $50 difference in the value. And if you will follow me over to the center panel, well, with the forbearance of the viewer, I think I want to break this now. We're about at midpoint of my 4 passes at trying to get this into a small, video. And as I edit this, I find a lot of little stumblings as I am trying desperately to get it very quickly, and I'm spitting things out like the bits and the bytes and getting a few things, little misspeaks in there. And I'm trying to show a process of thinking of how to get through that website, because just finding how to get to, the compare, you go straight to the website, you want to see a board, you click on the board, it pops up only that board. That's the only option you get. You actually have to either hit the more up in that top right hand corner of the web page, or pick one of the filters. Now, if you do the filters, it automatically pops up. So it's just a little more awkward. And then after you've got some, if you go back out to maybe go check a price or something, you come back in, then you can't find your selections. You actually have to delete one of the selections that you selected to get that one page to pop up, so you can reselect it to get back in there. So we've just gotten into a little bit of the differences of the two boards. We could go into discussion about that, how the Aqua actually has two PCIe 5.0s and one extra, so that's part of that EATX benefit that you've got. So we've covered a good basis on this. Why don't we come back and get the other essential half before we get that part done? We can talk about RAIDs and some other things, what would really kind of get back into this, what makes one board different than the other. And I don't know that there's any one better necessarily. It just is how well does it fit your needs.